Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for coming, and welcome to what I believe is the last installment in the Shifting the Lens perspective on life in our community. My name is Nikki Wharton, and I am retired as the Manager of Student Services with the Trillium Lakelands District School Board. It's a great place, and we have an excellent representative from the school board tonight to share a lot of excellent information with you. I think the first question that we're going to pose to these people is who they are and who they represent. And rather than me introduce them, I'm going to let each of the panel members, and I'm going to start with Peter Williams to my left, and away you go.
Thank you. So, Peter Williams, I'm with PARN, your Community AIDS Resource Network. It's based in Peterborough, but we serve the 4 counties of Northumberland, Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, and Peterborough. That's sufficient for now.
Sure, good. Diane. See, I know Diane from a former lifetime, just about, yeah.
My name's Diane McKay. I'm from Peterborough, and I'm representing PFLAG, and it's an organization for the parents and families of gay children, or parents, or anyone that you love. And I'll tell you more about the organization later, and it's national. PFLAG Canada has a good website. It's also international.
And to my right is Shelley Woon, who's the Superintendent of Special Education with the Trillium Lakelands District School Board. And I retired before she became my boss, which would have been.
Yes. This year I have special education and mental health as my portfolio. In the previous 2 years, I also had equity and inclusion and safe schools as part of my portfolio. But now Kevin Cutler, one of our superintendents, has assumed those responsibilities.
I'm Chase Weird, I'm Shelley Woon's daughter. I represent the Weldon Gay Straight Alliance. I'm an ally to the community, but I was raised by 2 moms and 2 dads.
Paul Reed. I'm an ordained minister with the United Church of Canada, ordained in 1987, and I'll speak to the significance of that date later. And serving at Cambridge Street United Church here in Lindsay. And I really can't separate those 2 organizations. They are in effect one and the same, the United Church. And I have some apprehension that I might be considered to be the face or the representative of the Christian community, but I need to make it clear right from the beginning that the United Church on many things differs from many other interpretations of Scripture. And as a denomination, we've always understood that God is constantly being revealed and we are constantly being called to reform.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, the first question that I'm going to ask the panelists to answer is, what positive changes in attitudes towards and rights of the LGBT community have you witnessed over the past several decades? So what positive changes are taking place in our community? And Shelley, I'm going to put you on the spot to start that.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to really try to speak from an educator perspective and wear that hat. It's funny that I thought, oh, I wonder if I should out myself when I come tonight, but then I didn't think about my daughter would do that for me. Anyway, no problem. Anyway, in terms of education, that what we've definitely witnessed is opportunities to speak about lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual issues within our classrooms. We've definitely seen a change in people having the opportunity, or educators having the opportunity to be educated on these topics that they used to be much more taboo in our classrooms than they would now. More families, same-sex families within our communities, and maybe it could be a question of whether they were always there or whether they're just feeling more comfortable in being out within our school communities. From a educator or staff position, having the ability to have same-sex benefits, which we didn't used to have the privilege of having, or the right to have, I guess, more than a privilege. Having GSAs, gay straight alliances within our schools, and most recently with Bill 13, the Accepting Schools Act, that schools need to respond when students express an interest in having a gay straight alliance. And I guess because of some of the work focusing on our students, that we've also seen staff feeling more comfortable coming out as well, though certainly not fully safe. Worried that still that they might have might be overlooked in terms of job opportunities should they come out. So just really questioning the security there. But definitely we've seen a shift in attitudes. And most recently, I think what we're learning is in terms of our transgendered youth within our schools, seeing many more transgendered students come out, and what does that mean for us within our schools, and trying to overcome those challenges, access supports, gain greater understanding, and how we might best meet their needs as well.
Great, thank you. Chase, I wonder if you might follow up then in terms of some of the positive changes from a student perspective.
Yeah, so being raised, when I was younger, I had a lot of difficulties with bullying because I had same-sex parents, but as I've grown older and people have matured, I've noticed that a lot of positive change has occurred, that people are more understanding and more accepting, and certainly their parents have become more accepting. Meeting with my family, and yeah, I've definitely noticed a lot of positive change in my life towards the LGBTQ community.
Great, thank you very much. Well, I guess we'll keep going in that direction. Paul, would you mind?
Yeah. Ordained in 87, that was the time when the church was deeply in the debate as to whether gays and lesbians could be ordained. That decision was made in 1988. And I had the privilege of attending and witnessing that event. And it was a divisive and difficult time for the church. The decision being made that yes, gays and lesbians should be ordained within the church. And it caused division among congregations. Now I tell you that because here's the contrast. In 2003, at another gathering of the church, the motion was put forward to call upon the federal government to recognize same-sex marriage. We made that decision almost instantaneously, but they gave ourselves an hour just to listen to some of the stories of people who would benefit by that recognition. And the response to that decision in 2003 was that there have been all sorts of churches that have stepped forward and said, we would welcome same-sex marriages here. So over the decades, just that remarkable change. And I see it still continuing. The conversations that take place in the church, there's an organization called Affirm United that encourages congregations to have a greater understanding and to know what it means to be open and welcoming. And some congregations have chosen to put the rainbow as a symbol. Others have said, God has extended the welcome. God has extended the invitation. Our task is to make that felt.
Great, thank you very much. Diane?
They've covered a lot of things, so I'm going to just mention a few personal things. I've noticed a difference with my friends and family. You don't hear the jokes the same as you used to. You don't hear the comments, and you don't hear the derogatory, that's so gay sort of thing as much, or hardly ever anymore. And I think that's really a positive thing. People are going to same-sex marriages, and it's becoming more and more mainstream, and I think it's wonderful. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. And Peter?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have too much to add. I think that as I was listening to the answers, there's been lots of changes, and certainly, I'm gay myself, and my experiences in school were not the best. It made me very uncomfortable to be in class. I got picked on a lot. And so it really had an impact on my early education and my ability to fit in. Certainly, there have been changes, and it's been such a treat to work with the Trillium Lakelands District School Board around their Positive Space program. We work with Fleming College here in Lindsay on their Positive Space program to help change the environments in schools, which is really exciting to see. But I'm always mindful that even though we've had huge changes around things like same-sex marriage, we still see people who call us saying that they've, been pushed out of either school or a job or a home because they're gay or lesbian or transgender.
So you just used the phrase gay, lesbian, transgendered. I wonder, could you, maybe we could just kind of look at some of the definitions, maybe, of what some of these,
Yeah.
would you mind doing that?
So I always allude to it as the alphabet soup. So, we talk about the LGBTQ, and that's sort of the abridged version. So lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, queer, questioning, two-spirit, and allies. And so there's different groupings. It's really a political grouping of words. It's not that each of those communities have so much in common that they belong together. It's really about they've been marginalized and stigmatized in a particular way that they've come together under a political umbrella. So the lesbian, gay, bisexual, that's all talking about sexual orientation. So the people that you're attracted to. And then there's transgender, transsexual, which is about gender identity. So somebody, I'll give you another word, so sex, biological sex, the parts you're born with, and then gender identity, who you know yourself to be inside. And what we know increasingly through science is that there's no chemical, biological, hormonal relationship between your biological sex, the parts you're born with, and your gender identity. So they don't always match what people think they should. So that sets up issues for folks.
Well, it sounds like there have been a lot of positive things that have happened in the last number of years. But clearly there's still challenges, still a lot to work on. So I'm going to ask the panel now to talk about what they think some of the challenges are that people in the LGBT community are facing in our community. And maybe this time I'll start again with Paul.
I'm not going to presume to know and be able to speak on behalf of others as to what challenges they experience. But I can identify that as a church, we often pose challenges. And one of the ones I'm aware of is that in the wider community, the presumption generally is that everyone is traditional and everyone is heterosexual. And even if someone were to speak of having a partner, the assumption would be that that's a partner of an opposite sex, and the language would reflect that. And so I'm aware that as a church, as a part of the community, we pose problems, but I leave it to others to identify the challenges they experience.
Chase?
Being ally, I can't, like Mr. Reed said, I can't really identify what some challenges people personally face, but I know growing up with two moms and two dads that I faced a lot of challenges in the community, and I feel that a lot of people hadn't been exposed to the LGBTQ community. So at school, a lot of people didn't understand that I had two moms and two dads. They didn't understand why that was the case. My teachers didn't understand that I would need to make 2 crafts for Mother's Day, or a lot of problems occurred. But like I said, I think my mom would be better at explaining the challenges that she's faced.
Okay, well, we'll just move on to your mom.
Okay, thanks. So maybe I'll speak from the educator perspective first, and maybe I'll leave some momness in there too. That I think that one of the things that we're really challenged with is that it isn't, when we look at doing LGBT education, it isn't something that everyone is welcoming of. So if we want to look at the Ontario Equity and Inclusion Strategy, that people are open to when we're talking about accessibility or we're talking about other areas of equity, but we get a lot of pushback when we're wanting to talk about homonegativity or heterosexism in our schools, and people feeling that some of the language that was on our sign, you know, maybe that's not appropriate, and hearing things, you know, like the bad words that are on the sign, but trying to help people understand that lesbian and gay, they aren't bad words. My daughter, you know, maybe used some bad words when she was little, the odd words slipping out, but lesbian, you know, saying lesbian at the age of 1 or 1.5 or 2 was not a bad word. And so helping people understand that is certainly being a challenge. And when we spend time doing equity education related to LGBTQ, that sometimes there's a bit of pushback looking at, you know, how much time we spent, but no one would ever question the amount of time or energy or resources that we would spend doing other types of education in equitable, on topics of equity. Even in terms of some of how far we've come in our learning, that there can be the assumption that we've arrived because we're doing great things, but we haven't arrived, that our students, our staff still experience a lot of heterosexism, a lot of homonegativity within our schools. Some of the challenges is really equipping educators and how to respond appropriately, how to respond with the language that they need to address issues that, you know, if they're hearing the way gay is used in a schoolyard, how do we address that without actually reinforcing that it was a negative word? So if we're saying, don't call him that, then that communicates that you've just said something negative. So how do you respond to our students so that we're not reinforcing those types of beliefs? Still many myths and stereotypes that we've actually created a resource for our staff to use that looks at some of the frequently asked questions that are really based on myths and stereotypes, and supporting our educators and being equipped. It's really challenging to educate people to really understand the experience of the LGBT community, and even sometimes it's even difficult when you're talking to individuals who are LGBTQ because of their own internalized homophobia, their own, after, you know, feeling lots of shame for a long period of time over maybe the way they're treated or haven't been included, even helping them understand what they're experiencing isn't acceptable, and so there's still a long journey to go, and I think we need to be committed to continuing on that journey.
Thank you, Shelley. Do you have anything to add, Ryan?
I was going to mention healthcare. Challenges for LGBT people to get health care, especially the trans community. And I would refer them to Rainbow Health. You can look that up on the computer, Rainbow Health. It's by the Ontario government. And there is help. There are doctors that will help you, but they're not always easy to find. And sometimes just general care from your own GP, and care in the hospital, putting down next of kin, being treated properly. So healthcare is a challenge.
Thank you. Now, Peter, I'm going to throw a little curveball at you because I want you to answer that question. But I mean, it's always easy or we tend to look at gay, lesbian issues primarily in terms of what we're talking about tonight.
Right.
But there are the transgendered and some other folks who probably have greater or as great or greater challenges and tend to be still a little more hidden in the community. So if you could comment on that in terms of some of the challenges.
Sure. So I think that, so we talked earlier about what some of the advances are, and so we talked about same-sex marriage. And so that sort of, for a lot of folks, feel like because they lump that alphabet soup as one grouping, they assume that then everyone's benefited in the same way, and that's not necessarily true. The other thing is, as a gay man, if I'm not feeling particularly secure, I don't have to come out. I can, what they would say is pass. I can pass for one of those heterosexuals. Whereas somebody who is transgender or non-conforming to this stereotypical beliefs of what a male or female should look like, and that those are the only two options available to you, it's much more difficult for them. So, yeah, and as Diane talked about, certainly access to appropriate services, and you know, you're raised to believe that you're not allowed to talk about certain things, and you know, Shelley, you were talking about that these words are bad and you shouldn't talk about them, and all of the shaming that happens. So if you don't feel comfortable or confident enough to talk about how you're feeling, how are you going to get the kinds of health services that you need to make sure you stay well? I mean, it's that kind of stigmatizing and shaming that meant that, or continues to mean, that gay men are disproportionately represented in HIV statistics in North America. So, does that
Yes,
answer?
thank you.
Yes?
No, thank
And then the one piece that I wanted to add that answers that question, just to piggyback on something Paul said, you know, that idea that we live in a world where everyone believes everyone else is heterosexual. So that's, as Shelley said, heterosexism. And as a gay man who goes out and does these speaks, I'm often asked about what it was like for me to come out. What's my coming out story? Well, first of all, there isn't just one. I have to do it over and over and over again, because everyone does assume that I'm heterosexual until I tell them otherwise. So for the telecare volunteers, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. I also often throw back to an audience, so for the straight people in the room, what's your coming out story? And I'm yet to hear one, because of course you don't have to come out. Everyone already assumes that you're straight. So that's another piece of disparity.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I think there's often, or a lot of people seem to think that places like Toronto is really the center of the universe, and that anything that happens is going to happen in or near Toronto. And we live, as you know, in what is called a fairly rural community. And so maybe we can, I'll ask the panelists to talk a little bit about, are the challenges here in the city of Kawartha Lakes really any different than those faced by an LGBT individual in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal? I mean, are our gay, lesbian people different here, or their challenges different here because we're in a smaller rural community, or is it pretty much the same? So I'm going to let somebody volunteer to start on that question.
I'll throw something out there. So my dad's and my younger brothers live in Toronto, and growing up I would always hear that my younger brothers faced no problems in school, that nobody really thought any different of them because they had two dads. So I felt sort of jealous that they didn't have to deal with any of that. So I think that in the city of Kawartha Lakes, people aren't often as educated about the LGBTQ community, and I'm certainly seeing a lot more education on that, but I don't know, I think it is relatively different in our community than it is in Toronto.
Great, thank you. Paul?
Sure. But I think that I'm drawing attention to some of the things that were said down at the other end of the table, but we can go back and forth and do that.
Sure, you can.
You talked about possibility of passing, and that for some people there isn't an opportunity to options or ways to have freedom in expressing oneself. There isn't a safe place to do that, whereas in a larger community you can find a community. And when you talked about the alphabet soup, and I think that we can add to that alphabet soup all sorts of other isms, religion and culture and race. And when you combine all of those different things, you can find yourself really feeling alone. And face it, I guess here in the city of Kawartha Lakes, it would be a real challenge for us to be able to gather together a sufficient community where anyone could feel not alone if they were identified in so many different ways. Into some of the social events around here. I think it'd be a real challenge to find opportunities to explore some relationships.
Thank you. Shelley?
Sure. I'll first speak from a personal piece. Just thinking about Chase's dad. One is a principal and one is a lawyer, and they were the first gay couple to be able to adopt together in Toronto. And so that was very public. So they were on the front page of the newspaper. And I was an administrator within the city of Kawartha Lakes, principal of a school, and certainly did not feel comfortable coming out. Maybe people would have speculated, but it was always something that I kept quiet, that Paul comfortably displayed photos of his family in his office, where I wouldn't have felt that same comfort working out of the board office. I feel a little bit more comfortable now than I did as an administrator in a school. So there's a few differences there. I think in terms of when we look at for our youth some of the isolation, that because we have lots of kids in smaller rural communities, the opportunity to find like peers, that those opportunities aren't there to the same degree that maybe when I'm looking at what's happening in some of the other school boards and events that they might hold after school or in the community, and being able to bring youth together for those. I think that there's a lot more opportunity, that it's easier for the youth to get to those events, and because you're dealing with maybe larger numbers of youth interested in attending those events, that there's some difference there, that we have as a school board provided some opportunity to our youth, but they are really events and not something that's occurring on a regular basis, and the geography certainly poses a challenge, congregating kids all the way from Huntsville and as far south as Bethany. But the other part that I was thinking is that there is one thing that we're able to do, I think, that maybe isn't necessarily the case in a larger board, is that one individual can really have a significant impact. So we had a small planning group of youth for our GSA conference, and those few kids that came together could really have an impact right across the whole board in terms of accessing or messaging educators when we're looking at educating our students or our families or teachers within a community our size. It feels, I think, more manageable to do than maybe if we were looking at the number of youth and families that you're trying to connect with across an extremely large board. So within a couple of years, like when we've gone to regional meetings, we're hearing from other school boards, wow, like the things that you have going on here are amazing, where they don't feel that they've been able to do maybe the same amount or have the same type of impact in such large boards. Anyway, that's just the other side of it, the positive.
Great, thank you. Diane, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I would say one thing that's faced by the smaller communities is transportation for the children to get to any kind of support group or event. Unless their parents can't bring them, in Toronto they can just jump on a streetcar, but sometimes the parents drive them long distances to get to a GSA or get to a Rainbow Youth meeting or something like that.
Thank you.
I would just build on the previous answers to say that how critical it is to be able to, when you already feel isolated and marginalized and on the outside, to try and find other people like you. And so one of the things that's different and why the positive space work is so important is that if your difference is because of the color of your skin or because of your faith or because of a visible disability, I could look around the room and think, oh, I think I might have some allies there. I can see other people like me. I can't look around this room and see who else might be gay and know that that's going to be somebody that's safe to talk to. And so it's why it's so important to have those visible signs, whether it's a bracelet, whether it's the positive space sticker, those sorts of things.
It's just making me think of something in relation to the previous question, because it wouldn't be specific to the city of Kawartha Lakes. But that is one of the difference for our youth when we're looking at equity and being accepted by your family is that if you're a child who's First Nation, that your family is likely First Nations as well. And so they understand the experiences or the discrimination that you might be experiencing or what your life is like in general. But if you're a youth and you're wanting to come out to your parents, that you may not be safe coming out to your own parents, and you may not be able to share what you're experiencing at school, because you're also worried then if you raise that issue with your parents that it's actually going to create challenges with you in your home. A child that's gone home and experienced discrimination because of a disability, their parents understand that child's disability and they welcome them and accept them within their home. But when it's a child who is, or even an adult wanting to come out to their parents, that you are at risk, that you're not guaranteed that they are still going to love and accept you and welcome you in their home and in your family.
And certainly, I get phone calls all the time from a wide range of ages. So I would say that I've had 4 phone calls just in the last month from older adults who recently became single and are looking to connect with other gay men, and they're terrified. They believe that if they were to come out more directly in their communities, that they would no longer be safe. I do presentations at Fleming College here in town, and on my way back to the car, almost every single time I do a presentation, somebody comes running up to me and says, "Thank you so much for coming. I'm the only gay person at the school." And I know that's not true, but there's, again, how do they connect? And they're afraid of coming out to try and connect. So I think there are those other challenges, whereas in the larger urban centers, if you don't feel safe in your own school, you know you can go somewhere else. In Toronto, they've got the 519 Community Center or those sorts of places.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Well, would anybody like to comment on, more specifically, the role of your organization in terms of providing support for LGBT individuals? And this is one, Diane, I think you can really shine at.
I brought enough of these little pamphlets for everyone. It's the P-Flag pamphlet. I'd like you all to take it. And on the back are the names of the contacts if you want to call any of us. Our mission is a national voice that speaks for more accepting Canadian society by providing support, education, and resources on issues of sexual orientation and gender identity. And we do that with chapters and contacts. Some of the chapters, like Oshawa, are huge. They have big meetings. We just have 3 mothers in Peterborough, but we will go and meet with anyone when they need it. And we also have meetings once a month. We did a big brunch for Pride. Did anybody come to Peterborough Pride? Oh, I see a hand. It was very successful. We've done it for about 10 years now. We have sharing meetings. We've started a new thing with decorating the windows on the parade route on all the stores and gave prizes for that. It's on our website. We go to things like this. We go to health fairs at the colleges and different places, take our literature. A lot of it is on safe sex, and a lot to just educate people and make it more understanding. But basically, what I want, my mission is, I want for my gay son everything my straight daughter had without even thinking about it. Safe at school, a good education. He was so bullied at school that he quit young. A good job. Fortunately, they both have good jobs now. But he didn't go as far in school as he might have if he had not been so unhappy at school. My daughter's marriage, I don't mind if my son will or not, but I want it to be his choice. And his job, his friends, everything. I'm not asking for the moon, I'm asking for the same. And if anyone calls. I'm sure some of you will be taking calls from gay people. I would be pleased if you would refer to this, and the closest one could be easily found on the PFLAG Canada website. You just type in, I think, the postal code or something, and it comes up on a map. So they will talk to the person. It's all confidential. There's no records kept. Because I was wondering how I'd ever say if I made a difference, because I don't always hear back from people. But I think I do. So I'm going to keep doing this work.
And you've been doing it for quite a number of years, haven't you?
Yes.
Paul, I think we'll come back down to your end of the table in terms of your organization.
We had a group within our congregation that has taken it upon themselves to offer educational opportunities for members of the congregation. And they've made use of books and study sessions and films. And it's one of the films, it was shown to a women's group in the afternoon, so probably the average age was well into the 70s. And they watched that film, and when the lights were turned back on, one of them just sort of summarized it and said, when you get older and you get wiser and you can see people for people, this is not a problem at all. It's too bad about those young people. And then they went on to talk about the bullying at school. We showed it to a youth group. And the youth group sort of took it all in stride and said, yeah, and it'll all be fine once we get rid of some of these older folks. And so the next challenge was to get some of those older folks and some of those younger folks to actually have a conversation together, and to realize that together it is possible to have a safe place, a positive space. But for all of them, regardless of the age, they all offered a personal experience of a family member, a friend, a neighbor, someone they've come to know. And I think that's perhaps the most positive and supportive thing that a church can do, is offer to people community where they are accepted for who they are and not defined by any individual characteristic or behavior. That's what we strive for.
Worth doing, I'd say. Thank
It's
you.
a lot of work.
So Chase, you're here representing the Gay Straight Alliance at Weldon. How's that providing support for some?
So we meet every Monday at our school, and we often have students drop by and come and share their stories or come to listen to other people's stories. And we try to make sure that we provide a safe space and listen to each other, but don't share each other's stories. Let people share their own stories. And we're trying right now to become more prominent in our school and make sure that other students can come to the GSA for whoever they are. And I've seen a difference since I've started in grade 9, how accepting our school is. And when we didn't have a GSA for a bit, you could really see a difference in the school. And then as soon as we started up again, it was just the presence of the Gay Straight Alliance that really sort of brought our school together.
So Chase, if a gay boy wanted to take his boyfriend to a school dance, can they do that at Weldon? And
Yeah.
I mean, it's allowable, but they're treated fine. It's all okay. They
Yeah.
just do that.
Yeah. Our school is actually fairly accepting now. When I was in grade 9, we had some trouble with the grade 12 boys not understanding how other people in the school felt about each other. But I know that for prom last year, I believe there was a few students that went together that were in the LGBTQ community. And we also had a Gay Straight Alliance prom held at Fenland last year. I wasn't able to attend, but apparently all I've heard is that it was very wonderful for all the people that didn't feel comfortable going to their schools. It was for the entire school board. So it was really nice.
So if the student in the hallway was being harassed or bullied in terms of their sexual orientation, do you think at this point other students might intervene, or is it still to the point where they would just sort of stand back and watch?
I think students would definitely intervene. I've had, on my first day of grade 9, these older boys were walking by me and they would bug me at elementary school, and they made a comment when they walked past my locker, and an older student that they wanted to hang out with told them that if they were going to treat people that way, they wouldn't be hanging out with them. So ever since then, I've had a really positive change in my life. I felt like the older students when I was younger wouldn't even stand by for that.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Shelley?
Okay. So definitely we have a responsibility to provide a safe and accepting and inclusive environment for our students to learn in and our staff to work in, and our families to be a part of our school community and feel welcome and safe. And it's quite a feat to try to make that happen. It involves a lot of education of staff, really taking our staff from wherever they're at in their learning and try to equip them with the knowledge that they require. And it isn't all about them not being accepting, and it's not about necessarily being homophobic. That some of it is they just really don't fully understand, or they don't have the language to respond appropriately, or a full understanding of the concerns. And so it really is trying to educate everyone. It's about how do we make our students who are LGBTQ feel as though that they're part of education every day, and that it isn't about an event. It isn't about Bullying Prevention Week, the third week in November, that it isn't about one event that happens. It's about every day and where they see themselves in the visual images within our classroom, within the resources that we're using, within the language, within, that when you see a female student, are you automatically asking them about their boyfriend? Well, we need to stop using that type of language and making sure that we are using inclusive language. And it's also, in this education, it is also, especially when we're talking about bullying, that it's also about our heterosexual students. So we do have some students who don't fit the typical gender stereotyping that we would be applying, and so those individuals, it may be a young gay male or a young male that is not gay who is not athletic, and so he's getting targeted, getting called gay and picked on, and offensive language being used toward him, or harassed. And so it's about people understanding the impact on our heterosexual students as well, and then even on bystanders of this, that it's watching people, how do you have the courage to stand up? So equipping our students to be allies and to be able to respond when there's a concern, and our responsibility is to educate our adults so that they are as inclusive within the staff room, within their classrooms, and that there's lots to accomplish. And so we're working away at it.
And indeed you are. And last but not least, Mr. Williams.
So in terms of PARN's mandate to address issues relating to HIV and AIDS, we use a social determinants of health lens. That means that we recognize that if we're going to talk about somebody's sexual health, we need to be able to look at from a holistic perspective. So issues of access to effective early childhood education, having good social support networks, having access to healthcare in a culture that you are comfortable being able to talk about your whole identity, are all critical to achieving wellness. And so that brings us work with issues of marginalization and brings us to the LGBTQ community. So we have a Rainbow Youth program, we have a Rainbow Youth worker. who both conducts youth groups twice a month at our facility in Parn. She visits GSAs throughout the 4-county region to offer them support. And she also chairs the Rainbow Youth Coalition, which is a coalition of youth agencies to ensure that they are able to sort of maintain a cultural appropriateness in terms of reaching out to and supporting LGBTQ youth. We also have programming for gay men. As I said earlier, the history of HIV looks at the gay men in North America particularly were primarily affected early on, and because they weren't treated equally and fairly in terms of access to health care and valued in the same ways, they continue to be disproportionately represented by the HIV epidemic. And so again, that's both work in terms of health promotion and creating good social support networks. And we work with other organizations like PFLAG and Rainbow Service Organization. I just went to the Rainbow Youth Organization to help to do that.
Peter, I want to say something here about Parn, and if I go too far in terms of the deluge of requests you might get, you can slow me down here. But I have the highest regard for this agency, and you know, in the course of the evening, you're getting a lot of information, but undoubtedly you may want more, or you may need more. And I think one of you can get a lot of information on the internet, but you don't always get accurate information if you don't know exactly where to go. For me, Parn is an agency that is sensitive, qualified, and competent, and so that's over a lot of years of working with that organization. So whether you're talking about a young person or even an adult, male, female, whatever their issues, I think you can feel safe in either directing them to or going to Parn for information, and it will be treated with the utmost confidentiality, as well as you will get a quality response from them, no matter what the question is, no matter who you're directing there. So I hope you don't mind.
I'll pass that along to my colleagues.
But I needed to say that, because that's one of the biggest struggles when we talked a little bit about urban and rural and what resources are available. And we don't have a plethora of agencies and resources and even people in private practice who will help with the LGBT community. Although, as you're seeing, the community is quite open to helping whoever they are and with whatever resources they have. But again, I will just steer you in the direction of Parn in terms of one of the best local resources that we have in this community. Thank you. Okay, just maybe to follow up on that, because everybody who's worked here on this panel has undoubtedly and hopefully had a number of successes and a lot of good things happening either within their organization or with individuals, and we certainly wouldn't ask them to disclose any information that might be confidential or identifying. But do any of you have any success stories or good news stories that you'd kind of like to share with the group tonight? And I'm just going to let you volunteer. And if you don't, then it's understandable. Shelley?
Okay. I think we've had a number of different things to celebrate, particularly over the last couple of years. One is that as a school board, we are really working with our community partners, so accessing Parn for our training. We've also accessed EGAL out of Toronto, and that was because the Ministry of Education funded EGAL for some training. But we had already been really engaged with Parn in providing education to our various staff roles, and then also trying to make sure that other community organizations participated in that training as well. So when we would host Parn or EGAL, that we also invited some of our children's mental health agencies or other organizations that support our children and youth in our community. We allowed or invited their staff to attend. So really trying to have the support of our our community partners. We've held 2 GSA conferences for our youth. And this past year we had 85 students from around our school board attend, and a number of adults, and really use it as an opportunity to educate the adults as well. That we've provided some resources to all of our schools. The resource I held up earlier, really to help administrators navigate some difficult questions and to assist teachers as well. But we've also provided some books into our classrooms where children might be able to identify themselves, whether the book has 2 mothers or whether it's about a transgender youth or whatever the topic might be, and looking at providing resources to our secondary as well as every elementary school. We've also had a staff GSA established, so we have held a number of brunches for staff to get together so that they're able to talk about what it means to be an educator in our system and what challenges they may be experiencing, or what are the positive things that are going on in their school and community, so that we can be supportive of one another. We also sent a delegate of youth to the first National GSA Conference in Toronto, and our school board was one of the most highly represented from right across Canada, which was exciting. That I think we had 11 or 12 youth attend, plus 4 or 5 staff, so that was really exciting. And we've provided lots of training to adults, and so we still will continue on this journey, and I feel like there's been lots of successes, and hopefully have really impacted youth. We've heard from youth letting us know that it's really made a difference, that it's allowed them to connect, and they've connected from people with other youth right within our system, but also beyond our system. So that's been exciting.
And of course, you're talking in the kind of the here and now, in the last couple of years with you being a superintendent. If I just look back to just a point 7 years ago when I retired, what has happened at the school board, I think from my perspective, has moved leaps and bounds in many ways in terms of providing the information and the training, and for the adults in the building, as well as the safety and security, hopefully for the students, and as well as safety and security for staff. I mean, really and truly, the TLDSB has made major leaps and bounds, and like any organization, still faces a huge number of challenges. You can't have big buildings with that huge number of staff and students and not constantly have issues to be dealt with, and some of them seemingly insurmountable. But again, it sounds like I'm praising my own here, but the TLDSB clearly is, I think, doing an excellent job in trying to make the school system a better place for LGBT folks, without a doubt. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on successes?
I would just, in terms of the Rainbow Youth Program, my colleague Anya has just done some terrific work over the last 2 years, and to have watched youth come in being really vulnerable, trying to find a voice and a place, and really coming into their own through the support that Anya is able to offer through the program, who can now come back and be youth leaders and ambassadors. It's really fantastic.
Great, thank you.
All 3 of my children have passed through Weldon and have had a remarkable experience there, a positive experience. But also through them, I've had the opportunity to connect with a lot of youth, and particularly youth that have a church or a faith background. And I think that one of the things I would lift up as being the most precious moments is when I'm encountering a youth who feels that contrast, or the fear of how their faith community will receive them if they were to be themselves, and to be able to embrace them and give the assurance that here you can be yourself.
Well, I think our successes are kind of confidential, but people have come up to me and said how much I did help them at some point. Not just me, on PFLAG. And something that we're doing right now that we're hoping to make a difference is called If You Can Play, You Can Play. And it's to do with sports, and we're working on getting it put on the Peterborough Pete's Jumbotron before the games. And my colleague Joyce Baird is working on it, so I'm not right up to date. But please watch for If You Can Play, You Can Play. Excellent.
So through the GSA, I've seen lots of successes. They are confidential, and but in particular, a personal success is that I have spoken with younger people who have same-sex parents and who have come to me for advice on how to go through elementary school and high school, and it's a really good feeling that people look up to you. Yeah.
It is. It's a very good feeling. Thank you for being there and doing that. What misconceptions about LGBT do you encounter? Are there glaring, obvious? Oh, go ahead, Peter.
No, I wouldn't know where to begin. So I think what I would say is that there's such a wide range of misconceptions. I think that people still work from a place of assumptions based on a whole lot of old experiences, outdated experiences, that part of the challenges we face is that people don't have enough opportunities to be exposed to difference and don't open themselves up to those opportunities. Leave it at that.
Okay. Shelley?
Sure.
Sure.
One of the things, and we experienced it quite a bit in terms of when we were messaging our positive space and one of the plaques up in the school and launching about that there would be education on LGBTQ. And so automatically people went to the whole idea around sex education and thinking that we are going to be doing sex education in our kindergarten and grade 1 and 2 primary classes, and that isn't what when we're talking about LGBTQ that we're meaning. And so really trying to help families understand that, and also teachers even understanding that. I think another misconception is that we still hear sometimes, that those comments or jokes aren't hurtful, and they are hurtful. And even if the youth or the adult is laughing, it doesn't mean that it didn't hurt. It's them trying to manage the situation and still feel as though they fit in. And yeah, I guess that's what I really mostly wanted to highlight. Just I guess to the just around stereotypes as well, and thinking that there is a specific image of what a lesbian may present like, or a gay male, or that we need to still really work on that. Any of our students, any of our parents, teachers can be gay, lesbian, bisexual, and not making those assumptions. And anyway, I think that's some of the misconceptions.
I was working with a young man, 15-year-old, who was trying to decide in his own mind whether he was gay or not. And he looked at me at one point and he said, "Well, I can't be gay." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because I don't like to shop." I mean, the misconceptions and the stereotypes. I mean, often the young people who are really at that point in their life where they're trying to get their head around some of their own orientation issues, they don't necessarily have the language or the information, and they're dealing with a whole pile of stereotypes in terms of their own coming out and decision making. But in the end, he was, and decided he was okay with that. I'm sorry, I've lost track of where we are. Anybody else want to, Diane?
The misconception that I want to get up on my chair and shout is it's not a choice. If nothing else, it's not a choice. And it's what you are, and you are what you are, and let's all be under that understanding. And I just that's my mantra.
Thank you. That's actually a good one. Anyone else? Did I miss Chase?
A common stereotype or misconception that I had when I was growing up is that I must be gay because I have 2 moms and 2 dads. And recently I described my story to somebody and they said, "Wow, you are so gay, you must be gay." And I was like, "I am not gay." So that's something I've dealt with my whole life, and an assumption that a lot of people make about me that is, it's confusing.
I'm not sure if I should say this or not, but I'm just going to ask Peter. Peter, did you just get your first coming out heterosexual story?
I think maybe. Yes. I'll make a note of it. That's very good.
I have actually had people ask me if I had to come up to my parents.
It was traumatic.
That's great.
Okay, the one, maybe the last question before we throw it open to the audience. What changes in our community or province, maybe even nationally, or maybe just in society in general, would have the biggest impact on your work and on the LGBTQ community? So what changes have to be made, or are there changes that can be made in terms of the greater community that might help us? Well, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up now. I'm going to gratefully and graciously thank the library and Telecare for sponsoring these evenings, and a very special thank you to Peter and Diane and Shelley and Chase and Paul. It's been a pleasure for us to be up here. Hopefully, it's shifted the lens just a little bit and will be of some help to you. Thank you.